Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, as a criminal defense attorney, trial lawyer, I unfortunately live in a world that is dictated and completely run by this thing called evidence. And yeah, some of the best defenses I ever came up with in my legal career, unfortunately, were thwarted by the evidence which was ultimately admitted into court. But every now and then, as a defense attorney, you find evidence, data, that is very, very helpful to prove a point, and this is one of those instances. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is gun-free zones, and we've been critical of gun-free zones here at Washington Gun Law because we think there's a real question as to whether or not they actually make us safer or do they make us more dangerous. And I think we got some data that's actually going to definitively prove that point. So today, let's go through the data and let's talk about how gun-free zones actually cost lives. Okay, before we get going too far down the road we're going, proud to announce that this video is being brought to you by Security Gun Club. That's right, Washington's nicest indoor shooting facility is in fact located right here in Woodinville, Washington. Now listen, you hear me brag about the facility all the time. It is the best. You hear me brag about the people because they are the best in the business. And you hear me brag about the training because it really truly is what I think sets Security Gun Club apart from all the others. But right now, what I want to tell you about is a special event coming up this Friday and Saturday, September 8th and 9th, and that, of course, is, SIG Day. All right, the folks from Sig Sauer will be there, factory reps 11 to 5, both Friday and Saturday. They're going to be bringing examples of all new firearms that they have, even ones that you can't actually technically legally buy in Washington State. Listen, everybody who stops by, throw your name in the hat because somebody's going to walk out there a winner of a free Sig Romeo Red Dot. There'll be a lot more chances to win other prizes and giveaways. So stop on by, see my good friends at Security Gun Club located right here in Woodinville, Washington. And listen, if you buy a new Sig Sauer firearm when you're there, you will receive an extra free magazine, 10 rounds or less, of course. Hey, that's not security's problem. Blame your governor and attorney general for that. So for more information, stop on by this Friday or Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. right here at Security Gun Club. Okay, so what we're talking about today is some data that I think is going to unequivocally prove that gun-free zones actually don't make you safer. They make all of us a lot more dangerous and actually probably cost lives. Now, what I was doing is I was taking a look at a bunch of data and some reports by John Lott. Now, many of you who geek out on this subject know who John Lott is. He's very famous. He runs the Crime Prevention Research Center, which is an organization that actually objectively looks at crime data, gun violence data, and things like that, and comes up with objective solutions to our problem. And shockingly, they don't routinely come up with civilian disarmament as a solution because, well, that doesn't really address the problem now, does it? Now, what Mr. Lott was attempting to do was to prove that actually defensive gun use had been used quite more frequently than what the FBI was claiming to stop mass shootings. Follow me if you would. The FBI had claimed between 2014 and 2022 there was 302 mass murders, which they define as 4 more victims that are not gang related, not domestic violence related. They got all different types of criteria. That is subject to a whole nother video in itself, but they claim that only in 14 of those was the shooter stopped by an armed civilian. That means less than 5% of the time. Now, what Mr. Lott did is he went through and he actually went through the same painstaking research that the researchers for this study had gone through, which is actually, since it was conducted by police departments and Texas State University, had not actually relied on any type of real data. No, instead they had combed all media sources to see what reports there had been of these incidents. And shockingly, and I know some of you may find this hard to believe, but when there is a lawful and defensive use of a firearm, it doesn't seem to get a lot of coverage in mainstream media. I don't know why, but that's just the way it works. But what Mr. Lott was able to prove is in fact that the FBI had in fact probably underestimated the number of defensive gun uses, and that the number was not twice as much, but actually more than 3 times as much. Now, that's not what I want to talk to you about though, because even if we take a look at the FBI's creative numbers. Let's just take a look at what their numbers claim, because what they're claiming is that there were 302 mass murders and there was only 14 defensive uses of firearms. Okay, Let's just assume that that's the truth in arguendo. We know it's not to be true because Mr. Lott has proven it to be untrue, but we're going to just assume this for the sake of argument. Now, here's the other thing that the data discovered by Mr. Lott and everyone else in his organization is that 98% of these mass shootings occurred inside a gun-free zone. Okay, and so when we take a look at, if we just take a look at 98% of these 302 shootings and just lop them off, well, you can understand where we sit already. As a matter of fact, the number of mass shootings now exceed the number of incidents that occurred outside gun-free zones, which again begins to beg the question is the accuracy of the FBI's numbers. But here's the thing. When Mr. Lott took a look at how many mass shootings occurred outside of gun-free zones, okay, this is where a shooter chose to engage targets in an area where there was not a plastic sign that disarmed everyone behind that sign. Because as we know, lawful and responsible gun owners, they will actually follow those signs. They are some of the most law-abiding citizens anywhere in the United States. Shockingly, criminals are not deterred by plastic signs that tell you that it's a gun-free zone. But when we had one of these horrific incidents occur in a location in which citizens could lawfully be armed and therefore lawfully defend themselves and everyone else in their presence, this is what we learned. In 2020, that percentage of shootings that was stopped in a non-gun-free zone was 51%. In 2021, it was 58%. And in 2022, a remarkable 63.5% of mass shootings were actually stopped by an armed civilian. So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that these mass shooters are picking off way more victims and thus creating far more carnage when the law has disarmed all of the victims. And is it any wonder, do you really think it is a coincidence that 98% of these shootings actually occur at a gun-free zone? Because when these maniacs choose to actually shoot up a place in which people can lawfully defend themselves, well, we are seeing not only the carnage go down, but we are seeing the effectiveness of a good guy with a gun. So the bottom line when it comes to gun-free zones is no matter how noble the purpose, no matter how noble the cause, and no matter where your heart truly is, if you're the one that promotes the idea of gun-free zones, the bottom line is that the objective numbers, the very crime data that we rely upon, shows you that gun-free zones are costing Americans lives. Listen, you may have more questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights. Now, if you do, you should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now, but if you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. In the meantime, I do want all of you to remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.